So you want to become a Mexican citizen and obtain that Mexican passport. In this video, we're going to break down exactly how to do that. Maybe you're already a Mexican resident, or maybe you're entertaining the idea of becoming a Mexican resident with the idea of eventually becoming a Mexican citizen. And in this video, we're going to break down exactly what that path to citizenship is going to look like. So we're specifically looking at Mexican citizenship via naturalization and via a residency path. There's obviously other paths as well. Maybe your parents are Mexican, maybe you were born in Mexico. There's obviously a couple different circumstances. What we're talking about today is citizenship or nationality by naturalization. So starting on the Wikipedia, which is honestly pretty thin, and that's why I have a couple more tabs open in my browser here, but we'll start with the Wikipedia. And it says that a foreigner who wishes to naturalize must present the application to the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, must formulate the renunciation of the person's country of origin and take the oath of sole nationality to Mexico. We can come back to that later. Knowledge of the Spanish language, knowledge of Mexican history, proof of integration into the natural culture, and then the most important part is the physical presence. So how long do you actually have to spend in Mexico? How many years of residency? It's a little bit complicated. It's a little bit circumstantial. So that's what we're going to get into in this video. So Wikipedia says, residence in Mexico for 5 years immediately prior to the submission of the application, or 2 years of residency if you're a direct descendant of a Mexican by birth, or the mother or father of a Mexican by birth, or a national of a Latin American or Iberian country, or to the judgment of the secretary, you've performed outstanding works. This is basically citizenship by exception. And then there's another provision for 1 year of residency if you've been adopted by a Mexican national, and all minors who are second generation descendants or have been under the tutelage of a Mexican national. Okay, so let's break this down. Basically, if you're a guy off the street, it's going to be 5 years of residency in Mexico. It's going to be 2 years of residency in Mexico if you can prove lineage from a Mexican, which is this first one. So we have a lot of clients that come to us and they say, yeah, I'm American, my great-grandfather is Mexican. And we say, great, if you can prove direct descendant from that great-grandparent, that should speed up your path to citizenship. But you're going to have to prove it, right? You're going to have to show birth and marriage death certificates for every generation, meaning you'll need your birth certificate, your father's birth and death certificate, your grandfather's birth and death certificate, and then your great-grandfather's birth certificate from Mexico. And any accompanying docs as well. Maybe you have like a certificate of American naturalization, or what's it called, like the Ellis Island data where, he came in, probably didn't come through Ellis Island if it's Mexico, but you know what I mean. Basically any proof that you can get that you're a direct descendant of a Mexican can help accelerate the path to citizenship from 5 years to 2 years. The next one is the mother or father of a Mexican by birth. This essentially means if you have a child in Mexico, you have a 2-year path to citizenship. So Mexico is one of the best destinations in the world for birth tourism. I'll have to do a dedicated video on birth tourism in Mexico. But basically, if you're American, Canadian, wherever you're from, if you come to Mexico, you can come as a resident or you can come on a tourist visa. You can have birth to a child in Mexico. That child becomes Mexican. That child will also most likely receive the citizenship of the parents, meaning you'll be able to pass on Canadian or American citizenship to that baby. You will be able to get residency in Mexico if you don't already have it. Based on the fact that you had a child born in Mexico, you can get instant permanent residency for both parents. So pretty good deal. Have a baby in Mexico, instant permanent residency for both parents. And if you stick it out in Mexico for 2 years as a resident, then you can apply for Mexican citizenship and essentially accompany your child who's already a Mexican citizen in having that Mexican passport. The next one is for nationals of Latin American or Iberian countries. This means that if you're from Spain, if you're from Portugal, if you're from anywhere in Latin America, then you will have a 2-year path to citizenship. Meaning, if you move from Brazil, if you move from El Salvador, anywhere in Latin America, if you move to Mexico, you will have a 2-year path to citizenship. The next one is basically citizenship by exception. So to the judgment of the Secretariat, you've performed outstanding works, cultural, social, scientific, technological, artistic. Maybe you hired a bunch of people. And if it's of enough benefit to the nation, the foreigner is not required to have resided in the country for the number of years prescribed by law. I will point out that this citizenship by exception, as we're calling it, it's a little bit sketchy. There's known to have been irregularities in the past where people have, essentially paid bribes and gotten Mexican citizenship via exception. So don't expect that you're going to get citizenship by exception just because, I don't know, you started a factory and hired 50 people. You probably would honestly have a decent case, but it's a little bit of a sketchy path to citizenship. It could potentially even be revoked in the future if it was proven that you obtained Mexican citizenship through an irregular process. And by irregular, I mean, somewhat illegal. So I would generally just discard this idea of citizenship by exception for most people and just focus on putting in the time, putting in the 2 to 5 years of residency and obtaining Mexico citizenship that way. Now, one thing that this Mexico Wikipedia article does not point out is the physical presence requirements. It talks about presence basically not at all. And I was looking for the keywords 18 months. I was looking for 24 months, which are key pieces of information. And it's just not here in the Wikipedia page for whatever reason. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a couple different sources and figure out the physical presence requirements. So now we're on a random lawyer's website. This is not a lawyer that we recommend or actually have had any contact with in the past at all. My Latin Life, we do residencies, we use someone else, but I found this guy's website and I just wanted to use a different source here. So what this looks like, residency, evidence that you have lived in Mexico legally and continuously for at least 5 years, and you are not allowed to have been out of the country for more than 180 days in the 24 months immediately prior to filing the application. In other words, you need to spend 18 months within a 24-month period before applying for Mexican citizenship. So if you're on a 5-year track to citizenship, you're looking at presence in years 4 and 5. If you're on a 2-year track to citizenship, then obviously we're talking about presence in those 2 years. Meaning, if you got 5-year residency, as an American or Canadian, those first 3 years, you have no physical presence requirements in Mexico whatsoever. You'll have to come to renew your residency visa whenever those are expiring. But otherwise, you have no physical presence within the first 3 years in Mexico, and you only have physical presence requirements in years 4 and 5, at least when it comes to becoming a citizen. And then if you're on a 2-year path to citizenship, meaning let's say you gave birth to a child in Mexico, then as we talked about, it's a 2-year path to citizenship, and you'll want to spend 18 months in Mexico in that 24-month period. So maybe you have relatives in Canada, the US, and you want to bring the baby up to Canada, the US, and have the cousins meet the baby, whatever. Just make sure that you're keeping that to under 6 months within a 2-year period, meaning you could call it 6 months, or you could call it 3 months a year per 2 years, but really it's 180 days in a 24-month period, okay? A couple more requirements and details here, but what I actually want to do is go to another website. So this is Mexico Relocation Guide. They've been around for a while, they're pretty well known, and I wanted to just kind of get a second source regarding that 18 months in a 24-month period thing. So, basic requirements: temporary or permanent resident card with a minimum validity of 6 months. So interesting note here is that you can go straight from temporary residency to citizenship. Common misconception, people think you have to go from PR to citizenship. They think that you have to go from temp to PR to citizenship, but actually you can go straight from temp to citizenship. There's not too many circumstances under which that would happen, but there certainly are a few. Maybe you're already a temporary resident and then you had a baby and then that shortened your path to citizenship, and maybe you decided you didn't want to, elect to be a permanent resident for whatever reason. We have, by the way, a dedicated video on temp versus permanent residency in Mexico, so you can check out that video as well. But just an interesting little tidbit there. And then moving on to what I wanted to show again is must be in Mexico for the past 18 months out of the last 24 months, meaning you cannot be outside of Mexico for a period longer than 6 months in the last 2 years. And you're going to have to submit an immigration history document showing the times that you were out of the country and for how long. They're going to ask for the exact dates that you were out of the country. They're going to ask for your entry date and departure dates, and you're going to have to give all those exact dates. And actually, Migraciones, or the INM office, is also keeping track of those dates, and they probably pull those INM records as well. Or really what you're going to want to do, you might even want to go visit the INM office where you are. They have them all over the country in Mexico. Check in and say, hey, I want to make sure my dates are all good in the system, because sometimes they just get recorded weird for whatever reason. So one thing you can do to just, double check you're going to have a smooth naturalization process is check with INM and make sure that the dates that they have are the same as the dates that you have. And if you note any discrepancies, then you can provide flight data and records of any flight purchases or bus tickets that you've purchased, and basically show your proof of what your dates are and how your dates are correct, so that you guys can overcome any discrepancies together and make sure that you and the INM office are on the same page. So as you can see, there are a couple other requirements here. You're going to need your apostilled birth certificate. You're going to have to pass the knowledge test. There's tons of study guides out there. There are Facebook groups dedicated to talking about the knowledge and Spanish test, so you can get more information there from other sources. I don't want to make this video too long and talk about every little thing. I think what people were most interested in was basically the path to citizenship and the physical presence requirements. So hopefully this video has shed some light on the physical presence requirements and the path to citizenship and your second passport, your Mexican passport. And honestly, it's a good deal. 18 months physical presence to become a Mexican citizen. Mexico's a pretty big place. You wouldn't even be able to see it all in 18 or 24 months. So maybe you're coming down from Canada to the US and you might be thinking, is it worth it to spend 18 months in Mexico to become a Mexican citizen? I would say absolutely, absolute no-brainer. You can hang out in one city for those 18 months, or you could even rip around the country and go everywhere from Baja to Oaxaca, down to Quintana Roo, up to Mexico City. I think it's a beautiful country, so much to explore, impossible to see it in 18 months. So you're going to have your hands full and the time will fly by, and that Mexican passport will be in your hands before you know it. So as we're wrapping up, just a note, we do have a dedicated video on Mexican temp versus permanent residency, the pros and cons of each, and I recommend you check out that video as well so that you understand what are the pros and cons of the different types of residency in Mexico. And if you want to become a Mexican resident, you can hit us up, you can book a call with us, we can help you obtain residency in Mexico for yourself and your whole family. And if you're ready to naturalize, if you're ready to become a Mexican citizen, we can help with that as well. We have tons of services on our website. You can place the order directly on the website, or you can book a call with us if you need more information. Thanks for watching.